Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us this morning. As more participants kind of trickle in, I know we have a short and brisk pace that we've got to get through. I just want to welcome you all. My name is Rafaela Loro, and I am the new Education Coordinator with CCI North Alberta. And I want to again thank you all for joining us for today's information session on condominium manager licensing. As many of you know, starting December 1st, 2021, condominium managers in Alberta are going to need to obtain a license to continue to operate. Licensing is a recognition of the specialized work that condominium managers do. And as condominium managers, you support the smooth maintenance operations of people's homes and businesses across the province. Licensing is a benefit and it protects condo owners. It's not just protection for condo owners, but also consumers and the profession of condominium management. And it does that by ensuring consistent professional standards across the condominium management industry. And here at CCI, we're really here to support you through this transition. And we've been working in partnership with the Alberta Real Estate Association, and we're in the process of helping to prepare education courses that will prepare condominium managers to obtain the license that you're going to need to continue to operate. And we know that there are a lot of questions that are been percolating around this new program. And to kind of help answer those questions, here today with us is Doug Dixon, who's both a familiar and favorite regulatory compliance advisor from RECA, who's going to help explain some of the specifics of this new licensing process, and also answer a lot of the questions that many of you have submitted in advance. So throughout this session, we would like you, if you haven't submitted questions in advance, to use the Q&A feature to add your additional questions. I'll be watching that and trying to keep track of that to help Doug. So we'll have a Q&A at the end of his presentation. But we also tabulated all of those questions that you sent in advance and sent those to Doug to help answer that. We know that this is going to be a really tight 60-minute session. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it right over to Doug to walk us through all of everything that we need to know about what's coming up about condominium manager licensing. So take it away, Doug.
Well, thank you. I'm just getting my shared my screen up here. And are we good?
Yep, you're great.
So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the overview for condominium manager licensing. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Doug Dixon, one of RECA's regulatory compliance officers. My role is to assist brokers and managers with any regulatory or practice issues. I have been in the real estate industry going on 40 years now. My condo experience includes selling condos and working with builders and developers in the 80s and 90s. I've been in the regulatory positions for about 25 years and have dealt with many condo issues during that time. For the last 3 years, I have been providing support to the Condominium Manager Implementation Advisory Committee at RECA, and I also own and have lived in a Bearland condo for the last 10 years and have been on its board for the last 8 years. So you can see that I've had quite a bit of exposure to the condominium management industry, and it's been very helpful in my role here. So we have lots to cover, so let's get started. So here are the topics I'll be presenting on today. In order to keep the presentation moving along and be respectful of your time, I will answer questions at the end of the presentation. As I am going through the presentation, please add any questions you may have in the Q&A function, as was mentioned at the bottom of your screen. Once I have finished the formal presentation, and you will have an opportunity to ask questions on the topics I've covered and anything else related to the regulation and licensing of condominium management. We also have about 15 questions that were submitted earlier that I've prepared the answers for. So the new governance structure that came into effect December 1st of 2020 has 11 public and 12 industry members. One of the requirements is that the board chair must be one of the public members. Each sector regulated by RECA has an industry council. As you can see, condominium management comes under the Residential Property Management Industry Council, shown at the far right on this slide. This council will be responsible for all types of condominium management, including commercial, recreational, and residential. So this definition of condominium management has been added to the Real Estate Act. So you can see it specifies that condominium management services means the exercising of a power or performing a duty on behalf of a condominium corporation, and not limited to. So the interpretation will be broader than what's specifically listed here, but the main points would be collecting, holding, dispersing, or attempting to hold or disperse funds, enforcing the bylaws or rules of the corporation, negotiating or entering into contracts on behalf of that corporation, and supervising employees or contractors. So it's quite broad, and that's already in the Real Estate Act, and the work that RECA does when looking at condominium management will be defined by this particular part of the Act. Here's a high-level time frame of how the licensing of condominium management proceeded. So we opened up the eligibility process back in August 3rd. So this is a process that people go through first to find out what license level they're qualified for. We have about a third of the expected number of condominium managers already completed the eligibility process, and roughly another third are in progress. But there's still a third, which would be somewhere in the vicinity of 250 people that have not even started the process yet. So we would encourage you to start that process if you haven't, because that could hold up your being able to be licensed by December 1st if you don't get that process started. I'll talk more about it a little later on. On October 12th, just last week, we opened up the license application process. So for people who have completed the eligibility process, they can begin the actual license application process, but that cannot happen until the brokerage and the broker have been licensed with RECA. Once that has happened, then the individual condo managers at the different companies can go through the licensing process. December 1st is the deadline for the start of regulation of the condominium management industry. So the rules and legislation will all come into effect for regulating and licensing of the condominium management industry on December 1st. So all persons and companies providing condominium management services are expected to be licensed, fully licensed by that date. And then between December 1st of this year and November 30th of next year, for that 12-month period, individuals will have that much time to remove conditions placed on their license. So every single person getting a condominium management license will have a conditional license starting out, subject to them, depending on the status of their license and their experience level and whether they've been licensed with RECA previously or not. All are factors that come into that, and I'll explain that later, but they'll have 12 months after their license to remove the conditions, and those conditions have to be dealt with and removed by November 30th, or the person risks having their license suspended and then not being able to work as a condo manager. So the structure for licensing is straightforward. We have sort of three levels. We have the company, which under our legislation is called a brokerage. And so there'll be condominium management brokerages. And the only activity that condominium management brokerages can do is condominium management. A real estate brokerage cannot do condominium management, and a condominium management brokerage cannot do real estate services. So it's been set up as a completely separate industry from real estate. The broker, the condominium manager broker, is the person responsible for supervising the brokerage. And you can also have associate brokers who have the same qualification as the broker, but are not the person designated as the senior person responsible for the brokerage. Then you have associates. So in licensing, they're called condominium manager associates, but these are the frontline people who work with condominium corporations. And although the licensing structure uses that formal term, Associates could continue to refer to themselves as condo managers or condominium managers if they prefer. This would include on business cards, letterhead, emails, etc. In order to move an unregulated industry into a regulated structure, RECA will issue conditional licenses, as I mentioned, to approved applicants subject to them taking the appropriate steps to remove the conditions by November 30th of 2022. Licensees issued a conditional license will be encouraged to challenge the appropriate exam or exams as soon as possible after being issued a license. This will allow time to complete any course or courses if necessary and retake the exam or exams well in advance of November 30th, should that be necessary. Any licensees that fail to do this will have their license suspended until they meet the requirements. While suspended, they would not be able to provide condominium management services until the conditions are removed and they reinstate their license. From the discussions I've had with many brokers and owners of companies doing condominium management, it is clear that many plan for their condominium managers to complete the appropriate courses prior to challenging the exam or exams. This is because they believe their condo managers will be more professional, knowledgeable, and it will lessen liability for their brokerage. Shown here are 3 different situations that currently exist for brokerages or unlicensed companies in the condominium management industry. So in the blue square, we have brokerages who are currently licensed with RECA that only do condominium management. So these brokerages, in most cases, we expect will simply transition their license from a real estate license to a condominium management license and drop the real estate requirements. In the green square, we have brokerages currently licensed with RECA, but that provide multiple services through that brokerage. So in addition to condominium management, they may do property management or real estate sales and leasing. So in that case, these brokerages will have to open a second brokerage specifically to do condominium management, as it's a separate industry. So even if it's as simple as a brokerage that does condominium management and property management, they will continue to do property management through their real estate brokerage and will have to do condominium management through a new condominium management brokerage. It can be the same broker if the broker is qualified to be broker for both. You can have staff shared. You can have staff licensed. If you have staff that are both a property manager and a condo manager, they can be licensed under both brokerages. And the company that owns the real estate brokerage can also own the condominium management brokerage. So there's not a need to set up a new company. In the case of companies not currently licensed with RECA, but that only do condominium management, these companies will have to set their company up as a condominium management brokerage. So they will have to get their company licensed and then as well their broker and all their staff that provide condominium management services. There are several situations regarding the status of brokers depending on the business model of the brokerage. So in the case where a broker is a broker of a condominium that only does condominium management, we expect those brokers will transition their license from being a real estate broker to a condominium management broker. If they do that, their qualifications for being a real estate broker will remain for a 3-year period. So they could renew their real estate brokerage broker license at any time in a 3-year period. In the green square, we have a broker of an operation that is providing multiple services, and the broker is involved with the condominium management services. So the broker has condominium management experience with corporations and with managing a condominium management, a company that does condominium management. So in that case, the broker has the option of being the broker for both the real estate brokerage and the condominium management brokerage if they choose. Or a company can decide to have different brokers, one for the real estate operation and one for the condominium management operation. It would be up to the business model and the staff at hand at the brokerage. In the orange, we have a situation where the company or the brokerage provides multiple real estate services, including condominium management services, but the broker is not involved with the condominium management. They may have another manager at the brokerage or their company that heads up the condominium managed division. And so this broker would not be qualified to also be the broker of the condominium management brokerage. They would have to have another person who's qualified to be a condominium management broker be the broker for their new condominium management brokerage. I'm sorry if I'm talking fast, but we have to get through a lot, and I want to get through the preliminary stuff before I get to the meatier stuff that with regards to licensing. So in the current case of associates, this is your frontline condominium managers. If the person only does condominium management, then and they're currently licensed with RECA, then they would transition their license over to being a condominium manager and no longer hold a real estate license. Now that's a choice that can be made. If they choose to keep their license in real estate, they can, but we expect most people that if the only purpose in being licensed is to do condominium management, then we expect them to transition over to condominium management. In the green square, we have a situation where the associate provides multiple services. So they may be involved with property management or sales in addition to condominium management. So that associate can be licensed as a real estate associate under the real estate brokerage, and can also be licensed as a condominium manager under the company's new condominium management brokerage. So they can be licensed dually with both because they're separate industries. That's why it's possible. Now I'm going to go, the next 4 slides describe 4 different situations that people fit into. And so think about when I'm on the slide that describes you, if you happen to be a condominium manager watching this presentation, then pay closer attention to the slide that you see that describes your circumstances. So the first slide shows the process a condo manager who is currently licensed as an associate with RECA would follow to eventually end up with an unconditional condominium manager associate license. So if they're currently licensed with RECA, they don't have to set up a new MyRECA account. RECA already knows who they are and has much information about them. So the eligibility process is very streamlined in that if you were licensed before January of 2014, you'll be requested to upload some identification documents because the standards for the documents has changed as of January of 2014. So that's basically just a housekeeping issue. And then from an experience point of view, they would have to provide an affirmation of their experience. I'll show you a form that's used for that if you haven't seen it in a couple of minutes. So the affirmation is their experience and details on condominium corporations, up to 5 condominium corporations that they may have managed in the last 5 years. So once they're approved for eligibility, then it would move on to being licensed with a conditional license. And that conditional license would be issued on December 1st of this year. And it would be subject to successful exam challenge and then completion of a course if unsuccessful in doing the exam. You always have the option, though, of taking a course first and then doing the exam. So if a person does the exam challenge and is successful, then the conditions get removed from their license, as you can see here, and they now have an unconditional license. But if they are unsuccessful in the exam challenge, they have to complete the appropriate course. So if they're already licensed with, as I said, with RECA, it's only the practices course that they have to do, condominium manager practices, because they've done the basic fundamentals course to get their real estate license. That course is comparable to the course for condominium managers fundamentals course, so they don't have to do that. So it's just the practices course. So they would do the course if they were unsuccessful in the exam, and then they'd have to rewrite the exam until they're successful. So this next situation is for, again, a frontline condominium manager, associate level, who's not currently licensed with RECA. So you can see under the eligibility requirements, there's actually more that has to be done. And that's because the person applying in this instance has never been licensed with RECA. So you would have to provide your proof of ability to work in Canada, your a government issued photo ID, certified criminal record check, which I will give more details on in a moment, be of good character, And people who have permanently withdrawn from industries regulated by RECA, we call it a Section 54. So it's typically when there's been a serious situation and there's a complaint and the start of an investigation, and rather to go through the entire discipline process, the person that is the subject of the complaint has decided to withdraw from the industry. So if they withdraw from the industry and sign off an agreement that they will never again apply for a license through the real estate council, that gets endorsed by in the past by the board. Now it would be by the appropriate industry council, and they would no longer be eligible for a license of any kind. So once the person has gone through that eligibility process, they would also complete the affirmation of their experience, corporations that they've managed within the last 5 years, up to 5. If they've only done one condominium corporation, that's fine, and they've just provide the contact information for that corporation. A concern sometimes gets raised about the uploading of these documents. So your government issued photo ID, for instance, your proof of ability to work in Canada, which could be, if you're not a Canadian citizen, it could be a permanent residency, a citizenship card, or a work permit. So you don't have to be concerned about the security of those things, because RECA has a very significant IT system in place to protect documents, access to information, and we don't maintain those documents. So once you submit, for instance, a driver's license or a passport page showing your photo and your basic information, once we have confirmed that the information provides us with the detail we required and it matches up with the person that we're going to be licensing, then we delete those documents from our system. So we don't store these documents for any length of time, just during the application process. So this person who's not currently licensed, once they've gone through eligibility and provided their experience and background information, they also would be issued a conditional license and have 12 months to remove the conditions. But because they've never been licensed before, they would have 2 exam challenges to do for fundamentals of condominium managers and condominium manager practices. So again, if they were successful at either of those exams or both of them, then they would, or both of them, they would move on and have the conditions removed from their license. But if they should be unsuccessful in either one of them or both of them, then they would have to do the appropriate course or courses and rewrite the exams and eventually remove the conditions from their license. In this next case, it is for brokers and associate brokers. So somebody who's licensed at a higher level. Again, this slide is for somebody who's already licensed with RECA, and so there's just the updating of identification documents that come into play. The experience is the same. They provide the same information on their experience, which would include details about what condominium management companies they have been involved with managing. So both corporations and companies that they've been involved with. And then they would go through and be, once approved for eligibility, would get their conditional license issued effective December 1st. And they would go through the same process where they would have to do an exam challenge. And because they've done the fundamentals course previously and the broker's course, the only course that these people, as they're currently licensed, would have to do would be the practices course for condominium management. Again, if they're successful in the exam, the condition is removed from their license and they move on. If they're not successful, they would have to do the course and then rewrite the exam until they are successful. And then lastly, we have a situation where somebody who is unlicensed, but their experience and their work level has been at the equivalent of the broker or associate broker level. So these people would apply for eligibility and they would have to provide all the same information as mentioned a couple of slides ago and upload the information through their Myrica account. Then I guess, well, they'd have to provide the affirmation on their experience. Same thing, they get issued a conditional license December 1st. And then because as a broker or associate broker equivalent, they've never been licensed with RECA and done the appropriate licensing courses, they would have to challenge 3 different exams. So they'd have to challenge the fundamentals, the practices, and the broker's exam. If they're successful on any of these, they would not have to do the course. If they were successful on all of them, the conditions get removed from their license. If they're unsuccessful on any of them, they would have to do whichever one of the 3 courses or more that they have to do before they're allowed to rewrite the exam. So it's a little more robust. This is probably the most difficult situation, is for people who are coming from the unlicensed condo management world and are going to be working at the management level. Now, I mentioned good character in earlier slides. Good character is a requirement for license eligibility, and the good character is evaluated at 2 different times. One is when we're licensing people at the beginning of their career as whether they're in the real estate industry, condominium management, or mortgage brokerage. And the other time would be if there's a complaint against them. It may bring up good conduct concerns that we would look into. So this slide shows what the essentials of good character are, and they're things that you would expect: serve the public interest, protect consumers, high ethical standards, protect the reputation and integrity of the industry, and enhance public confidence in the industry. So how do we look at it from a regulator perspective? Well, we look at these main points. Do they have respect for the rule of law, which would include the Real Estate Act, the rules, the Condominium Property Act, and regulations, and the bylaws of the corporations that they're managing? Are they honest? Are they governable? Do they have financial responsibility? And lastly, professionalism. So to give you, I'll explain 2 of these very quickly. The governability issue comes up. If somebody has been investigated and disciplined by RECA for breaching rules, but they continue to breach those same rules on an ongoing basis, and regardless of how many times they get disciplined, fined, sanctioned, we eventually look at them as being ungovernable. So to give you an example, we had a situation a couple of years ago where a very high producing associate in real estate had decided they would do whatever they liked on the advertising side of things. Well, we have very strict rules around advertising, and this person continually broke the rules. And it started off with a warning letter, moved on to administrative penalties, typically around $1,500. And then that escalated as this person continued to do what they were doing. They felt that the fines and the sanctions were just a cost of doing business, and they wanted to be able to continue to do their marketing and advertising the way they wanted to do it, and not according to the rules. Well, eventually that came to a breaking point, and they were deemed to be ungovernable and went through a hearing process, found in breach of a number of rules, including not being governable. And that person ended up being fined and cost of hearing in excess of $90,000 and a long suspension of their license on top of that. So it's taken quite seriously. Financial responsibility ties when somebody's making an application, whether for a new license or renewal, would be typically the most common would be bankruptcy proceedings. So if somebody's been bankrupt or they've gone through orderly payment of debts, that falls under the Bankruptcy Act. So you have to report that in a licensing application or renewal. But if you're going through the Myrica process for a license application, and you've had a bankruptcy procedure somewhere in your past, you need to report it. And typically they will ask you to upload the document that released you from the bankruptcy proceeding once it was finalized. RECA will not typically prevent somebody from holding a license because they've had a personal bankruptcy. It typically will not be a bar to licensing. So if you're concerned when you're going through the application process because you've had a bankruptcy and you have an option of paying a fee and having an assessment done on your personal situation before you proceed, I would recommend don't bother having that done if it's simply a basic personal bankruptcy. It will not be a bar to licensing. However, if somebody's had 3 or 4 personal bankruptcies, that could be problematic, and we would look at that situation much more detailed. So I mentioned licensing exemptions, and the licensing exemption that's in the Act, there's a broad one, as stated here, that the Real Estate Act, as it relates to engaging in a condominium management service, does not apply to a condominium corporation in respect of the condominium corporation managing its own affairs. We've recently had the provincial government refine their interpretation of this clause broader than they had initially. And it's going to be interpreted that it applies to directors, officers, and true employees of condominium corporations. So if a self-managed condominium corporation hires an employee, for instance, to assist the board in managing the affairs of the condo corporation and enforcing the bylaws, for instance, then a self-managed corporation using an employee to do that can do that and would be exempt under the Real Estate Act. However, that has to be it cannot be a contractor, an independent contractor, or on some other kind of. It can't be a consultant. It has to be a true employee, and the condominium. And the way we look at that is the condominium corporation would have to be deducting the typical CRA deductions such as CPP, UIC, income tax from that person's salary. We are awaiting the final details of the exemption regulation, which is another piece of regulatory law that is attached to the Real Estate Act, excuse me, that will specify who else is exempt from being licensed. Typically, that would include people like lawyers that may be acting on behalf, be appointed and acting in some fashion, or various other official actions that have been taken by courts to appoint people to manage the affairs of a condominium corporation. So it will vary, but we won't know what that says exactly until sometime in the next month when the provincial government releases the exemption regulation. So moving on, RECA has two departments that are there. The first department that brokerages will see on a regular basis is called the Trust Assurance and Practice Review. The practice review officers that come out and visit brokerages are there to ensure that the brokerage, the condominium management brokerage, is carrying out its responsibilities according to the Real Estate Act and the regulations and the rules, the standards of practice for condominium management brokerages. It's done as an education process primarily. So they're there to help brokers ensure that they're following the rules and to make recommendations of practices that might assist them in doing things better. Typically, it's often referred to, people refer to it as an audit, but it's not really an audit in a typical sense. They're there to help you and to point you in the right direction if they identify issues. We also have our conduct review department that deals with complaints. And so we have a whole process of how complaints are dealt with when they come in and looked at. About 50% of all complaints that are lodged with RECA get dismissed for various reasons, that they're not within our jurisdiction, there's not enough information to proceed, that there's no breach when it was initially looked at of our rules, or it's the actual issue that's being complained about is not really the responsibility of a condominium manager, but maybe from a lawyer or an accountant or somebody else that's involved with the corporation. So there's a whole process we go through with complaints. Typically, we would be looking at complaints from condo corporations that if a condo corporation has a complaint against a condominium manager or the brokerage that employs the condominium manager. We will look at complaints from unit owners, but our preference would be for the unit owner to first deal with their board on the issue. And if it cannot be resolved and the complaint does involve the condominium manager, then the complaint can be lodged with RECA. So RECA will look at all complaints that come to it and put them through the same process. Every brokerage will be required to carry specific E&O insurance coverage. The requirement is a minimum of $1 million coverage, excuse me, for the brokerage and its employees, including its condominium managers. They must keep that policy in place all the time that they're providing condominium management services. And if the policy lapses at any time, terminates, canceled, expires, they must immediately notify the registrar at RECA, and they would have to stop providing any condominium management services until the insurance is reinstated. The second insurance is for fraud or dishonest acts, and this insurance covers the board members of the corporation, any employees the corporation employs, and any third-party management brokerages the corporation hires. So under the CPA, in the regulations, there is a requirement for every condominium corporation to carry this insurance. And that insurance specifies what I just described. So the insurance has to cover third-party condominium managers as well. So our rules require that any condominium manager and its brokerage that are looking at providing condominium management services to a condominium corporation, before they start providing services, they must ensure that that corporation has this insurance in place and that it covers the brokerage as well. If at any time, as with the insurance lapses, is canceled, or expires, they have to immediately notify us at RECA, but they also have to make an effort with the corporation to reinstate insurance and stop providing all other condominium management services until the insurance has been reinstated. So I'm now going to move on to the licensing structure. And the first part is that every person who's going to be licensed as a condominium manager at any level, including their brokerage, has to be set up through our Myrica licensing system. So you have to set up a Myrica account. So if you haven't done that, you would go to our website at reca.ca, and you'll find a button there for Myrica, and you would click on set up a new account, and it would follow the questions and the prompts and go through that process to set up your account. And it's our online portal. We do all our licensing through the Myrica accounts. So every single person applying for a license has to set up their own Myrica account. For people who are already licensed in real estate, they would use that same Myrica account to go in and add their information for condominium management and process an application for licensing. So I mentioned the eligibility application. So before you can go forward, you must complete this eligibility process. And then applicants who are not currently licensed with RECA have to have a certified criminal record check done. And I have a couple slides that give specifics on that in a moment. There are slightly different requirements for those people who are not currently licensed with RECA versus those that are. And the people that are licensed with us, we already have, as I mentioned before, lots of information about them. So we don't expect you to supply those. But one of those changes that have happened, normally everyone who applies for a license at RECA would have to provide proof of at least a high school graduation level or higher, as well as English proficiency. Because the condominium management industry, the people that are currently working in this industry are being required by legislation to go from being unlicensed to licensed, RECA has removed these two requirements for high school or certificate or higher to be provided and English proficiency. Those were considered, they would be a bar to people who have already got experience, and in some cases may have been working in the industry for a very long time, and it was considered unfair to force them to go through this process. However, once December 1st comes and there's new applicants who are brand new to the condominium management industry, they would have to provide this information as part of their standard application for licensing. So as part of the condo manager eligibility, those currently licensed with RECA, as I said, they would use their current account, they would go to the education tab, They would select condominium management in the drop down for where it indicates what industry are you making an application for. You'd go through the several screens of answering questions. You would upload a current government photo ID if you were licensed, as I said before January 2014. You would upload the condominium management experience affirmation that I mentioned, and I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. And then you would wait until our staff at RECA have approved your eligibility application. Once they have approved it, you will get an email telling you that your application is approved, and you can go back into your Myrica account and you would see where you've been green lighted for making an application for a license. So for those people not currently licensed with RECA that are new to being regulated, they would have to open and complete a new Myrica account, as I mentioned before. They would do the same thing, go to the education tab after they've set up their account. They would select the condominium management dropdown, upload their ID. Again, they would, if they're not born in Canada, they would have to upload one of these documents, such as permanent residency, citizenship card, or work permit. They would, their identification that they upload must include a clear photo, full legal name, and date of birth. And if you have changed your full legal name at any time, you need to provide the documentation for that as well. So if you've gotten married and you've adopted your spouse's name, or you now have a hyphenated name, you would have to provide your marriage certificate that shows that you've changed your name. Or if you've gone through a legal application to change your name as well, you would have to provide the document that approved a legal change to your name. You would also have to upload your experience affirmation, and again, wait for approval. If there's any questions or concerns about any of this by our staff, you would get messages back asking you to provide more information or correct something before they could move the application forward. So I've mentioned criminal record check a few times, and so people who are already licensed with RECA don't have to do this because they're current. But brand new applicants or somebody who was licensed with RECA, but they've been unlicensed for more than a year, they would also have to get one of these done. So those of you that need to get a criminal record check done should start this process immediately. Don't delay it. It can take a month to 6 weeks to get through the whole process. You must be fingerprinted based on a CRC done by the RCMP. You cannot use the typical local police force check or a venerable sector search. They're not as extensive as the criminal record check that we require, which is a fingerprint-based criminal record check to make sure that the person that we're identifying is in fact the person that's applying for a license. Your CRC must include your full legal name and birth date, and this check is done on 3 levels. So we have to get the fingerprints of the person, their legal name, and their birth date all to line up. Believe it or not, when criminal record checks are done, there can be instances many instances where the legal name and the fingerprint, or not the fingerprint, the legal name and the birth date matches up with numerous people in Canada. And that's why we have to go to the fingerprints to narrow it down to a specific person. So if you go to the RECA website and go to the getting licensed tab, you'll see there's a lot of information on how you go about getting the criminal record check done. And the locations are available by connecting through to the RCMP website, or you can, if you can't find it, you can simply email me and I'd be happy to provide you with the information. So identification documentation, as I mentioned, people licensed earlier than January of 2014 must provide a government issued photo ID. Again, their validate their ability to work in Canada, and a name change document if their name has ever changed. The condominium manager licensing application process can only start after you have completed the eligibility process. So everybody has to go through the eligibility process to determine which license level they would qualify for, whether it's the frontline condo manager associate level, or it's a broker or associate broker level. Once you've done that and been approved, then you would be in a position to apply for your actual license. And but licensing cannot move forward, as I said, until eligibility is done, and then your broker and your company have to have gotten licensed first. The brokerage has to be licensed, and the broker has to be licensed. Then the broker can start bringing in the other people who are going to be licensed with the brokerage if they've been approved through eligibility. So once that process is all started, which most people should be underway doing that now, whether it's the eligibility process or if they've already gotten past that, they may be entering into the actual licensing process. The other piece is for condominium managers, and you must provide or must set up a condominium management brokerage. So once the broker, a person who's going to be broker, is approved, they have a button on their Myrica account under applications that says to open a brokerage. So they would be approved as a broker. They would be getting licensed as a broker at the same time they're licensing their brokerage. So they would go click on the open a brokerage button, and they would go through the steps and upload the documentation required. And eventually our licensing staff would approve the brokerage once everything's complete, and approve the broker as the broker for that brokerage. And once that's all done, then, and the fee is paid, then the broker would be able to start adding the other people who are going to be working for their brokerage as a licensed condo manager as soon as they have completed their eligibility and been approved. On our website, you'll find the licensing fee schedule, and you will find it by simply putting it in the search function. So on the home page of the RECA website, if in the first function you were just to type in licensing fees, the list will come up and you'll see this licensing fee schedule. This is just a piece of it, but you can see at the bottom here are the basic fees for condominium management. So you'll see for the brokerage, the fee is $450, and for the individuals at any level, the license fee is $475. And RECA has made an effort to streamline the licensing process for the start of the regulation of the condominium management industry. This includes waiving the eligibility administration fee for applicants already licensed by RECA, waiving the application review fee for all condominium management brokerages, and waiving the requirements for unlicensed condominium managers to provide proof of education and English proficiency. So we've tried to streamline this to move people from an unregulated industry into a regulated industry as smoothly as possible. Once the initial licensing of the existing condominium management industry is complete, new brokerages and licensee applicants will have to meet and pay the regular requirements. So that brings me to the end of the formal presentation. This is my contact information. So feel free if you're having problems or if you're confused about anything or need more clarification, feel free to reach out and email me or phone me. I'm here to help you through this process. Do it earlier rather than later so that you're ready to go for December 1st. For information about condo manager licensing and the processes and all the details, you can go to the RECA website, and if you click on this symbol on the middle of the website's homepage, that'll take you to a page that will link you to a lot of different information, including a long list of frequently asked questions on a lot of the most common issues that we hear about. So I'm going to be happy to answer questions that there may be about RECA and the regulation and licensing of condominium managers. I'm going to start first with the questions that have been sent in to CCI North in advance of this presentation. So the first question are, what are the specific responsibilities of a condominium manager versus the condo board? Well, we don't specify all the responsibilities. What we do have is that condo managers must abide by the standards of practice contained within the RECA rules. But in addition, they must meet the obligations agreed to in the service agreement they have signed with the condominium corporation. So your service agreement between a condo corporation and a condominium management brokerage should specify what the responsibilities of the condo manager are going to be, what authorities you're giving them, what do you want them to do on behalf of the board. So every situation is slightly different and is tailored to meet that particular situation. When will the education be required, and can we start the exam process if we choose to challenge? So as I mentioned, exam challenges and courses, if required, must be completed within a year of being licensed on December 1st, and that should say 2021. We're not reaching out that far yet into the future. At the moment, the exams and the courses are not ready. Third-party course providers have not yet completed the courses. One of the delays is that the provincial government has not yet finalized approval of the rules and standards of practice for condominium managers, as well as the exemption regulation. But we expect that all to come together over the next month. And the courses will be available sometime between mid to late November onward. We're not sure until the course providers tell us. As soon as courses are available, we will communicate that information out to the condominium management industry. And as soon as exams are available for challenge, we will do that as well. Again, our recommendation would be for most people, take the course or courses before doing the exam challenge, because you may find if you choose to do the exam challenge, it might have just been a waste of the $150 fee for writing an exam, because the exams will be on a broader base of information that the courses cover than many people may think from what their experience has been in the condominium management industry. So if you want to review what's going to be in the courses, not the actual information, but what is required to be covered in the courses, you can go to our website, to the link that I gave you earlier, and you can find excuse me, a link there to documents that provide you with all the education competencies and learning outcomes required for the various courses. And that will give you a strong sense of what's involved and what you're going to be examined on. Will there be any oversight provided to those who choose to challenge? Well, I'm not 100% sure what was being aimed at on this question. So Jules, if you're on the session here, you can clarify if I haven't answered your question. Exams will be carried out through our RECA process, and the exam sittings will be at supervised exam centers located throughout the province. So we contract with a company that actually carries out the actual exams, and they provide the locations where the exams are written, and people are supervised under strict requirements while writing exams. So you have to be properly identified when you show up for an exam to prove that it's in fact the applicant that is writing the exam, and then the applicant is supervised during the exam. There's very tight controls. As condo owners, how do we know whether or not the property management company we have is licensed correctly? It won't be property management companies, it would be condominium management companies moving forward from December 1st. And I've cut two pieces out. So anyone in the public or in the industry will be able to go to the RECA website at RECA.ca and search for condominium managers and condominium management brokerages by name or location. So you can click on search by person, or you can click on search by brokerage when you come to that function. I should have indicated this strip of information is at the top of the home page of the RECA website. So you would click on find a licensee, and that would bring you up to a page that would have this information on it. And you click on either one of these, and then it would provide you with more detail. And you would key in the information of what you're looking for, and up would come, if the person is licensed or the company is licensed, then it will show in our search function. And we strongly recommend that all condominium corporations do this check to make sure that the company they've employed as a manager, if they have one, is in fact licensed as of December 1st. We had several questions on the same issue. So do these new rules apply to smaller self-managed condos, and will they be grandfathered in? When will the exemptions be declared for self-management boards that hire someone directly to do most of what a manager does, but not the whole list? What are the exemptions for self-managed condominiums, and how is self-management defined? So I mentioned that before, and when I mentioned that piece in the Real Estate Act that specifies that essentially a self-managed condominium corporation does not require to be licensed. Their directors, officers, or true employees of that corporation are exempt from licensing. So that answers all of these questions, I believe, that a self-managed condominium corporation and its true employees will not have to be licensed through RECA. However, if you're using any third party, and people will use different names, they should be, they're required to be licensed as a condominium management brokerage and condominium managers. And we see in real estate, and I've seen some of it on the condominium management side, where people call themselves consultants. And what we find in many cases when we look at the activities of consultants, they're carrying out activities that are activities requiring a license. And we would tell them that they would require a license if that was the case, and they would have to get licensed before they could continue to provide those activities or services with condominium corporations. How will self-managed condominium corporations be regulated? The owners deserve oversight of those self-management bodies as well. Well, we understand that many people have concerns about how condominium corporations operate. We see issues with how boards carry out their function and don't follow the CPA or the regulations or even their own bylaws. We see rogue situations where a rogue board of directors or a rogue president don't follow the requirements and do what they want rather than what they're required to do. All of those types of issues are problematic. And we would hope that condo managers would try to help point them in the right direction and do things properly. But RECA will not have the authority over condominium corporations. They are regulated under the CPA and the Real Estate Act, and RECA are not responsible for the CPA and its regulations. The Real Estate Act only authorizes RECA to regulate persons and companies providing condominium management services to the condominium corporations. So that's the extent of our ability. We would try to help situations that may be happening that are problematic, but we have no legal authority to force the issue or to make a board do certain things. That's completely out of our control. What is the process for a brokerage license? How do we set up a brokerage? I touched on that a little bit earlier on a couple of slides, but there is a video on the RECA website with a presentation similar to this, but the latter half of that presentation that you can watch goes into great detail, showing lots of screenshots of Myrica and the licensing, eligibility and licensing processes, as well as the process to license a brokerage. There are also a series of tutorials on the RECA website that you can access and go through before you actually try to do something through Myrica to license an individual or to license a brokerage. Does a one-person consultant company have to become a broker as well? So most consultants would be carrying out services that fall under the definition of condominium management and would be required to be licensed. If they're not carrying out any of the functions that are identified as that require licensing, then they could be a consultant and not be licensed. But the minute they cross that line and are carrying out what we call the provision of condominium license management services, then they have to be licensed. So if they happen to be and they are doing management services and they're a one-person operation, that person would have to be qualified and get licensed as a broker in order to open a brokerage and operate. They could operate as one person, but they still have to have a brokerage and they have to be licensed as a broker. Do all managers with or without being attached to a management company need to be licensed? So a condominium manager cannot operate separately from a condominium management brokerage. All condominium managers must be licensed under a licensed condominium management brokerage and be supervised by a broker. So there's no exception to that. A condo manager just can't be licensed as a condo manager and not be under a brokerage. The structure is brokerage, broker, and then frontline condo managers. So everybody providing condominium management services has to be licensed under a brokerage. What is the accountability for poor managers? And this is a misunderstood area in real estate, and I believe it's misunderstood from what I've seen of the condominium management world. Condominium managers will be held to the RECA rules and standards of practice. RECA does not manage or regulate service levels. Condominium corporations must deal with the condominium management brokerage when experiencing poor service. The ultimate results of poor service could be the condominium management brokerage losing the contract with their condominium corporation and also suffer from damage to their reputation. So if they're providing poor service to numerous condo corporations, it's only a matter of time before that catches up to them and word gets around. So good service is what most companies live by, but we don't regulate whether it's good service or bad service. They have to meet the standards of practice. If they're doing that, but on the fringes, they're not providing good service, you as a condominium corporation would have to deal with the condominium management brokerage. And I would say you would typically have to, if the service is poor by the condo manager, you would have to go over their head to the broker of that brokerage and discuss the issues. It could be as simple as the condominium brokerage appointing a different condo manager. Or in some cases, it may mean a parting of the ways between the corporation and the management company. So it's very much a contractual issue. What is the complaints process associated with this new licensing program? What sanctions can be imposed? Are management companies bound to meet the expectations of the board with regards to reporting, properly investigating, and documenting complaints? So this is multiple issues. RECA operates both practice review and conduct review processes, as I described earlier. Practice review is a proactive process to try to prevent problems or issues arising. Conduct review deals with complaints submitted to RECA. So RECA has the authority to levy sanctions, including letters of reprimand, administrative penalties up to $25,000 per breach of the rules, as well as suspension or loss of license. So if somebody's in breach of several parts of the standards of practice or rules, and there's serious breaches, it could be multiple fines of 5, 10, 15,000 up to 25,000. So we've seen instances where people have been fined 75, 100,000 plus for not conforming. We have also have the ability to investigate and sanction unlicensed condominium management. So if it's reported to us, a person or company providing unlicensed condominium management services, and we investigate, typically the first thing we would do is tell them to stop the activity. And if they want to continue the activity, they have to go through the process of getting licensed and before they can continue. If they were to continue unlicensed activity after they've been warned, typically we would take disciplinary action against them and sanction them. And in real estate, we have seen sanctions of $100,000, $150,000 for unlicensed trading in real estate. And we could see the same thing happen for unlicensed provision of condominium management services in the condominium management industry. So that brings me to the last of the questions that were submitted previously. And we can now go to any other questions that may have been raised that Rafaela has been keeping track of.
Yeah, and thanks, Doug. Actually, we've had a few questions come in, and I know we're just past the hour, and you actually managed to answer most of the questions that have come in because most that were submitted in advance kind of covered off what came in. We did have just just building off of that last question from Sam, just to clarify, when it comes to the complaints process, where exactly on the RECA site can owners or boards find the rules? If you can, maybe we can share that out in advance. Is there a specific spot that gives, clarifies exactly for complaints? If there's a list of regulations that what's under the purview for RECA?
So once the final version of the rules and the standards of practice have been approved, they're incorporated into the broader rules that RECA has for all three industries that it will be regulating, and those rules will be posted on our website where all the legislation, regulations, bylaws, and rules and standards of practice are located. So consumers and industry alike would be able to go to the website and read those in detail, as well as for complaints on the website under the consumer tab. There's when you click on that, you'll come to another selection of tabs, and one of them is for making a complaint, and there's a process described, and there's actually if somebody wants to submit it online, they can actually go through and complete the submission of their complaint online, or they can send it in by email or by snail mail.
All right, thanks. And Jules did actually have a clarification on their question, and it was actually about the challenging the exam. It was about, will there be actually a sharing of the course content for anybody who's wishing to challenge? Is that going to be available for folks who are hoping to do that? So rather than going through all the education process, they have an opportunity to look at the curriculum, if I understand correctly. That was something that was available when RECA was responsible for all the licensing courses, but going forward, RECA will not be the one doing the courses, so it'll be third-party providers. And we don't know yet what third-party providers are going to offer along that lines, if they'll have a study guide or if they would even, for instance, sell the materials for the course separately from actually being licensed, or not licensed, but registered for taking the course, so that people can study or review before they actually do the exam challenge. Okay. There are a few more questions, but just under just for time's sake, what I'm going to suggest is that we are going to kind of package those up and send them to you, Doug, and just do a follow-up with the folks who have submitted them and share them back, because we are going to be posting the recording of this session on our YouTube channel with the full transcript. And I know you shared your contact information, and there are a lot of questions. And you did mention the third-party providers of this program, and CCI is hoping to be one of those providers, as we mentioned at the top of the hour. And just for everybody who has been checking their mail, you may have received a survey just reminding you to sign up for more information about this upcoming education programming. And so check again, because we're have sent out that letter recently to have you sign up for that wait list about the upcoming education program. So we're sending out the information again, working with area about what's coming up, because those courses are very close to being completed. So thank you, Doug, for sharing all of the information about what's been happening at a breakneck pace to get everybody set up before the December 1st deadline. So you've shared a wealth of knowledge today, so we really appreciate it.
Well, you're quite welcome. And there was one thing I'll mention that is yet to happen is we're planning on holding a couple of virtual information sessions in the last 2 weeks of November, because by then we hope that the standards of practice and rules will have been approved by the minister, and that the exemption regulation will have been approved, that we'll have more updated information on the exams and course providers. And so we thought we would do a couple of just general update sessions. They won't be long sessions. I won't go into as many issues and topics as I did today, but it will be an opportunity for people to sort of get a last minute be caught up on what's happening just prior to regulation starting on December 1st.
Yeah, and we'll definitely share that out with our members. You'll get that in our newsletter and as well on our website, ccinorthalberta.com. So thanks everybody for joining. If you haven't already, make sure that you register for our AGM next week, which is coming up on the 26th, and keep your eye out for our upcoming education sessions. So Thanks everybody for sharing your lunch hour with us, and we hope to see you at our next session. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.